All right, what we got here? Ezra Klein. The problems Democrats don't like to see. So, from what I understand, I saw a Majority Report segment on this. This is like Ezra Klein trying to defend his book, The Abundance. Well, it's called Abundance, and broadly speaking, it's now being branded as the Abundance in general agenda. Broadly speaking, if to keep it as simple's sake, quickly as possible, the abundance agenda is basically, hey, what happens if we just heck in snub progressives, say that they're cringe, and everything is the fault of regulations, and we just don't talk ever about any of the main root causes and basis for as to why the American political system is as broken as it is. And we all know why. What the main common denominator, what the common factor is. Well, it's capital. It's people with money. It's with wealth and power. That's the main fucking problem. But Ezra Klein wants it to not be that because, again, Ezra Klein, I assume, is probably a millionaire who probably gets paid by fucking billionaires. Broadly speaking, there's a reason why all these like dumb fuck like libertarian billionaire Silicon Valley types like Mark Andreessen are saying like, yeah, actually I'm a big fan of the abundance in general. Whoa, I wonder why. Oh, it's because it doesn't fundamentally challenge your power. That's why. What do we got here? I've had a fascinating few months. Abundance, the book I wrote with Derek Thompson, is either going to save the Democratic Party or destroy it. It's going to destroy it, to be honest. You think I'm kidding? Here's the Wall Street Journal's headline. Can the abundance agenda save the Democrats? Here's the Nation. Why the abundance agenda could sink the Democratic Party. The Atlantic placed the book at the center of the coming Democratic Civil War. Okay, we already know from polling, there's been polling on this saying that if people were going to make the abundance argument in comparison to the populist argument, abundance always just got fucking blown out of the water. Like we can do this, right? We can pull up the meme, right? Abundance agenda polling. Like people are not fucking goddamn jiving with this shit. They're not going with it. Polls showed that 55.6% of voters say they would be more likely to vote for a candidate for Congress or president who made the populist argument, while 43.5% said they're more likely to they'd be more likely to vote for a candidate who made the abundance argument. See, it's already underwater in comparison to populism by about 12 fucking points. Like quite literally, it's not going to work. Even amongst Democrats, I believe, right? Because this polling tested between Democrats. Democrats were more receptive to the the populist fucking arguments. The poll asked respondents whether they agree with the populist argument or the abundance argument and found that the plurality of 42.8% said they agreed more with the populist argument, while 29.2% chose the abundance argument. Once again, Democrats and independents particularly favored the populist argument, 59% to 16.8% amongst Democrats, and 44.3% to 28.4% amongst independents. And, while Republicans, and this is the fucking main crux here, while Republicans favored the abundance argument, 43.7% to 25%. This is the main fucking crux of the issue. This is meant to cater to suburbanite fucking Republicans. This mythological voter that the Democrats have been constantly pushing themselves further and further to the right with. This is the main problem with the fucking abundance agenda. You go with populism. You want to fucking win? And this will even play well amongst probably a lot of Republican constituencies. You make the fucking populist arguments. You have like a backbone and show some spine. You make the populist argument. That's what's going to be effective. Not this fucking abunda shit that's talking about fucking further fucking deregulations of, the markets and of housing developers and stuff like that. That's not going to be the main thing that solves the fucking issue of the Democratic Party. Abundance is going to fail. It's not going to work. But, whatever. Before Abundance came out, I worried that its argument would be too agreeable to generate much debate. I didn't foresee Ragnarok. Okay, again, like I said before, Like, dude, how much fucking money do you have? How much net worth do you have? You work for the New York Times. I assume you're probably a millionaire. You're a very well-known fucking opinion columnist. You probably get paid quite a lot of fucking money. You also have a podcast. The problem is that in comparison to the average sort of like political zeitgeist, Ezra Klein is incredibly out of touch. Like all of these other fucking neoliberals that are trying to, whoa, crazy, repackage and rebrand neoliberalism. But I was wrong about who would perceive it as a threat. The book is largely a critique of how Democrats have governed in the places where they've held power. But the obvious targets of that critique, blue state governors such as Gavin Newsom and Kathy Hochul and top Obama and Biden administrations, have largely embraced it. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey laid out a plan for housing abundance. More than one top Democrat I expected to react defensively to the argument told me that they felt that they could have written it. So again, we've talked about this, right? The problem isn't with an abundance of resources or over fucking regulation. The reason why Democrats are fucking agreeing with this, especially, people like Gavin Newsom, Kathy Hochul, and fucking top Obama and Biden administrations is because they are willing to move more and more to the right. They are okay with acquiring, again, the sort of dumbass fucking billionaire, millionaire, bourgeois cash that, abundance would argue for. That is the main fucking problem here. But you're surprised that a lot of the more populist elements, more left-leaning parts of the Democratic Party in its broader constituencies are just not fucking going forward with the abundance agenda? Because broadly speaking, I rag on the fucking American people constantly. Broadly speaking, everyone knows what the main problem is in Washington, D.C. It's not with, burdensome regulation. Nobody gives a fuck about any of that stuff. The problem that they're having is with politicians and Washington not being willing to listen to them. And abundance, guess what? Still helps maintain that fucking structure. That's why no one's down for the Abunda agenda. This is for Democrats a liquid moment. The party is reimagining itself after its crushing loss in 2024, and a lot is riding on which critiques are woven into its renewal. Dude, if you just fucking adopt a socially democratic message and policy proposal, you're going to just destroy the Republicans. They're not going to stand a chance. We don't even have to go socialist or anything. We can just go slightly more to the left of center, and you're probably going to crush the Republicans. And so the backlash to the book has come from a faction of the party that saw itself rising within the wreckage and worries that abundance will derail its ascendance, the anti-corporate populists. Now, Ezra, you should ask yourself this question. Why are people who are anti-corporate not big fans of abundance? Oh, it's because, again, the argument isn't addressing the root causes of the problem. And that is corporations, the rich, the wealthy. People are not going to be interested in hearing the stupid, abundance shit. We already have some polling on this, right? It's not popular, even amongst Democrats. It's just not going to work, dude. Abundance is an effort to focus more of American politics on a surprisingly neglected question. What do we need more of? And what is stopping us from getting it? Okay, it's not about a sort of have and have-nots. Okay, let's be honest here. The problem is that there isn't anything that's stopping you. Or technically speaking, actually, yes, there is something that's stopping you. It's billionaire and corporate cash, which broadly speaking, everyone at this point has identified as the main fucking problem. Elon Musk and Doge have put that more and more to the forefront, to the front and center. And guess what? Nobody fucking likes that shit. Crazy. It is that focus that some of my friends on the populist left object to. Zephyr Cheatchout, a Fordham University law professor who's a central figure on the anti-monopolist left, told me that her problem with abundance was the policies with the central question. What should be focusing democratic politics and policies? Because this is politics. I'm going to say that's politics and policies here. In general, on the problem of concentrated power and the way in which concentrated power is making it impossible to do things. It's a pretty good question. Again, like not. That's the main. That's also the same thing that I've been saying. The agenda is not. It's not focusing on power. Ezra Klein is saying that this is a book that's about power, making the argument of pro-power position for the Democrats, and I'm just like, dog, you're talking about fucking regulations and like progressive advocacy groups as the main problems to power, and not the billionaires, not like Citizens United. Okay, dude, nice meme. Demand Progress, a leftist advocacy group, went so far as to commission a poll to see which message appealed more to more voters. Voters were asked to choose between two framings of the big problem in American life. Was it bottlenecks that make it harder to produce housing, expand energy production, or build new roads or bridges, or rather that big corporations have way too much power over our economy and our government? Unsurprisingly, the latter won. I would also advise politicians not to center their messages on bottlenecks, but let's ignore that for now. Wait, but that's the argument that you make in the book. You talked about how regulatory red tape and interest groups, more progressive interest groups, are the main problems for as to why there is no expansions of energy production, housing, or and other forms of infrastructure. You make that fucking argument within the book itself, and when you talked with Sam Cedar, that those are the main problems. So that's not like you don't want it to focus on bottlenecks? Okay, sure. I found this polling interesting. It reflects a tendency to treat actual problems as secondary to campaign messaging. No matter how well a message polls, it's not going to solve a problem unless it is right about what is causing the problem in the first place. And Democrats aren't struggling primarily because they choose the wrong messages. They're struggling because they fail to solve problems. I wholeheartedly disagree with this. Joe Biden fucking solved some problems. They certainly needled the dime and worked around the edges. Sure, I don't disagree with that necessarily. The problem is that like they know how to solve the problems. The thing is that's more important to look at, yet again, is who are the main people that make it such that is way harder to actually solve problems. It's the rich, broadly speaking, right? And it's not about like the correct choosing of messaging or whatever. That doesn't fucking matter. Again, or like regulatory issues. That's also not the fucking problem here. The problem is broadly speaking, and it's been made self-evident and fucking clear, more so with Elon Musk and Doge. The rich and the corporations that currently have unsurmountable fucking control, or insurmountable control, within the annals of Congress. Broadly speaking, everyone understands that that's the main problem, but even with like housing, so like what? That's what Ezra Klein is fucking talking about. The main problem with housing is the fact that and I've talked about this before, housing developers very, very often will sort of use campaign finances and donations to a lot of regulators within the municipalities in order to ensure that, hey, not too much housing is going to be put up unless the money to pay the rent is going to be there, or that they can raise the rent themselves. There was a Majority Report caller that called in about this, saying like, in Austin, Texas, like the abundance guys are wrong about this. There are plots that have always been open and are ready for housing development, and they've been allocated for housing development. So that's not the problem. It's not regulatory bottlenecks in that particular case. The problem is the developers. Because what do they want? They want a guarantee to their investors that they're going to make fucking money. The problem is privatization and the fact that the developers are the ones with control, power, in order to dictate who is going to build the housing because they want to make a profit first. That is the main fucking problem. So if the profit motive is not there, if they can't make money by constantly like raising the rents or being able to control the rent themselves, they're not going to go ahead with that housing development because they're not going to make money from it. That's the issue. I often focus on housing because it is by far the largest item in the average family's budget. Is it housing? Probably with like rent and stuff, yeah? And not cars? Cars is like 20%. It probably is housing, right? Housing's probably like 30% or something like that. If you want to help the working class, the place to start is housing. Can you fix the housing market by breaking corporate power? Yes. Yes, absolutely. What do you mean? You go after real estate developers and you basically force them to not, you know, have to deal with fucking goddamn what? The profit motive. Nationalize fucking housing. Build a lot of fucking public housing. That is a way to break up, well, corporate fucking power. Why do you think so very often that, private housing developers will very often lobby local fucking governments to, whoa, crazy, not go ahead with public housing? Because that cuts into their profits. And they know that people are going to prefer the public housing more so because they don't have to pay as much in rent for public rent stabilized housing. That's the fucking issue. Or as like even with like Zoran Mamdani's even saying like freezing the fucking rent, recognizing that due to housing developers and real estate developers wanting to only build luxury condos and price the working class out of the housing market so that they aren't able to get housing, and more so focus on luxury condos as a form of speculative real estate assets to gamble with these houses on the fucking market. That is the more important point. And also to invite a lot more private financial capital to, well, essentially buy up all of these housing units. For, again, like I've been saying, speculative real estate assets. The book itself and the agenda never fucking talks about any of that stuff. And that is why, leftists are having a problem with the abundance agenda. A recent RAND report compared the cost of producing multifamily housing, both market rate and affordable housing in California and Texas. Per square foot, it costs 2.3 times as much to build market rate housing in California as it does in Texas. If what you care about is affordable housing, the gap is even worse. It costs more than 4 times as much to build a square foot of affordable housing in California as a square foot of market rate housing in Texas, largely because of the avalanche of everything bagel requirements that public money triggers. Again, the thing is, it's not addressing the main fucking problem. Again, a lot of fucking municipal governments are going to go to the private sector in order to fucking build a lot of fucking housing. And what they care about more is, well, not regulations. That's not the fucking main problem. What they care more about is making a profit. That's the issue. And you still want to focus on the fucking everything bagel. Crazy. It takes, on average, 22 months to bring a project to completion in California. I find it implausible to argue that the reason for this disparity is that Texas had solved this problem of corporate power and oligarchic influence, and California has not. Well, the thing is, Ezra, is that neither has fucking solved that fucking issue. Both fucking development and real estate fucking people have control of the local and state governments, such that they are the only type of housing that goes forward is luxury condos that are not going to be fucking affordable to price average working people out. And if people want to try to go ahead to build more affordable housing to not price out the working poor, guess who fights tooth and nail to prevent that? It's the real estate developers. Crazy. In March, Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, tweeted that Chicago invested $11 billion to build 10,000 more units of affordable housing. That nets out to $1.1 million per unit. If you dig into the process for selecting affordable housing projects, you'll find there's a rubric that rewards each project up to 100 points for fulfilling different goals. A project gets 10 points for advanced level green building certification. It gets 11 points for BIPOC development control or a women-led development team. It gets 7 points for fulfilling certain accessibility requirements. Cost containment is worth 3. I'm assuming that's probably like budgeting is what he means. Again, like, who the fuck cares about goddamn having to spend so much money on fucking housing? First off, like, again, I've talked about this before. What is the main reason for as to why there has to be such high fucking costs? How many? Well, first off, there are a lot of fucking zoning problems that exist, broadly speaking, within a lot of democratic cities. That is not necessarily an accurate thing to say. But the biggest problem is, again, real estate developers and their money. Because all they care about is they want to just build more and more luxury houses. That's it. And luxury condos, because those are going to be most lucrative for them. That's the main fucking issue. So guess what? They're going to lobby and make it as difficult as possible to, go ahead with building affordable housing units. This isn't a problem about, the price. The problem is with corporate power that keeps interrupting. That's the issue. But what do you think lobbying is, Ezra? Johnson is the most proudly left-wing big city mayor in the country. He is happy to attack corporate power and oligarchic control. He's also at least the least popular big city mayor in the country and may well end up as the least popular mayor in Chicago's history. Policy failure breeds political failure. It's not just policy failure. How many fucking ads, I guarantee you, have been probably put out by, I don't know, people who exist within the sort of corporate sector of housing have probably put in ads, and how many fucking attacks have there been by Republicans talking about like how Chicago's a shithole city that has crime and gangs everywhere, and how many people have fucking lied about it? What do people of Chicago fucking think? That's the real fucking question. How many of it is like people being pulled in like the suburbs and stuff? That's the real fucking question. Lots and lots of questions you can ask, for as to why he may be as unpopular as he is. Don't get me wrong, corporations and billionaires do have too much power over the economy and the government. The tax code is deformed around their preferences. The campaign finance system is designed for them to freely funnel money to their favorite political candidates and causes. There are markets in which corporate concentration or monopolization raises prices and chokes out competition. All kinds of all kinds of facially neutral processes, from the writing of regulations to the rules that govern procurement, are bent towards their enrichment. President Donald Trump's big beautiful bill cuts $1.1 trillion in taxes for Americans making more than $500,000 and cuts $1.1 trillion from Medicaid and food stamps. The Trump administration is proving itself a festival of corruption and self-dealing. But these are problems that Democrats already know how to see. What bedevils the party is the problems that they refuse to see. Again, I have to ask you this question, Ezra. Then why are so many finance capitalist fucking goddamn billionaires and stuff and all these tech bro fucking oligarchs, why are they fans seemingly of the abundance agenda? Why is that? Because they understand that it's not going to fundamentally challenge their power. So, you can make this whole fucking goddamn argument, but if you simply, again, because this is what he's doing, shift the blame on public progressive policy advocates and not the rich, then, whoa, crazy. It turns out the billionaires are going to fucking like that because they understand that their challenge isn't being, or the power isn't being challenged. Steve Tellis, a political scientist at Johns Hopkins University, is wise on this point. Populism only works if it's full spectrum populism, he said on the Realignment podcast. If it looks like you only deploy populism to attack the alternate government coalition to yours, then people don't believe it. They don't believe you're really on their side. They just think of you as they think you're just a regular partisan. Many of my more leftist friends and antagonists have asked me if abundance has a theory of power. I often says it does, but they're not going to like it. And that's in part because its theory of power is liberal rather than populist. Yes, but that's the problem. People are not interested in liberalism. Neoliberalism is dead. Populism is what is in. That's the fucking problem. Cass Mud? Whatever. The Dutch political scientist defines populism as an ideology that considers society to be ultimately separated to two homogeneous and antagonistic groups, the pure people and the corrupt elite. Different forms of populism populate these groups differently. Right-wing populism defines the people in a geographic and nationalistic and racialist terms. The corrupt elite tend to be educated, foreign, and cosmopolitan. Left-wing populism tends to sever society economically. The 99% against the 1% or the corporations against everyone else. I mean, to a certain extent, also like right wingers also take this, but yeah, this is a pretty accurate telling as to the populism here. But are we gonna do like the horseshoe fucking bullshit? What we got here? Well, both forms of populism share is a tendency to treat virtue as a fixed property of groups and policy as a way of redistributing power from the disfavored to the favored. I feel like this is a little reductive. I think this is a little reductive. I don't think I 100% fucking agree with this, to be honest. Populism, broadly speaking, yes, sort of like focuses on the corrupt elite. Because broadly speaking, everyone understands that the corrupt elite is the main problem, and they know that their government can do something about this. There's historical precedent of the government being able to do something about the corrupt elite. You know, so to say, blah, 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 blah. The problem is that the corrupt elite are the ones who have full control of the annals of power. So guess what? People have lost trust and are more looking to be populist or have like a more anti-establishment bend simply due to the fact that everyone recognizes who are the ones with the levers of power. The rich, the corporations. They, broadly speaking, they know. Of course, a lot of the right-wing populists will take this energy and racialize it. That's what they generally do, and be nationalistic about it. They're lying every single time, which is why it is accurate what he's saying here, but it's a lie. This is complete bullshit. Right-wing populists are totally okay with the corrupt elite being educated, foreign, and cosmopolitan. They don't give a shit about that. They just want to bend them to their will, more importantly. Whereas with left-wing populists, they are just against all people who are rich, all people who have control of the annals of power. That's what it is, which is why people argue that in reality, this book is not about a critique of power, that does not sort of take a look at, whoa, crazy, the main problem of the current American political system. Who is currently being favored? So, yeah, from the disfavored to the favored. So this isn't, like, exactly fucking accurate here. It's a little reductive, right? Currently, the fucking system favors the rich and the 1%. This isn't about the rich being disfavored. It's about recognizing what is the current, systems of power and control that exist within the government. Again, right-wing populists only do this in order to get power, so they have control for themselves. And will drop the fucking populism right off instantaneously. Like, think about it. Trump, right-wing fucking populist. Most billionaires in his fucking cabinet has had, like, way more fucking billionaire money donated to him in comparison to, like, say, Kamala Harris. Pretended to be pro-peace, is currently thinking about bombing Iran with Israel and shit like that. Nothing about what Donald Trump is selling, or the right wing in general is selling, is populist. Nothing at all. Whereas with left wingers, they're significantly more principled and actually do care about populism, first and foremost. When I said we needed a liberalism that builds, David Dane, the editor of the American Prospect, responded that we need a liberalism that builds power, and that the way to get it is for the government to start actively supporting the very groups that have been left out of past economic transitions, building the necessary coalition for long-term transformation. I don't necessarily agree with David Dane. Don't necessarily disagree with David Dane on that one, to be honest. Every policy in this telling has two goals. One is the goal of the policy or the project, perhaps trying to decarbonize the economy or build affordable housing or increase competition in the market for hearing aids. Why does it have to be fucking increasing competition in the market for hearing aids, right? Like, again, with free, this is another problem that I have, okay? Having to take a look at the private market, the invisible hand of the economy, of the market, rather, having to be the main thing to drive production and innovation, stuff like that. That's another problem that people are probably also having with the abundance agenda. Again, hearing aids are healthcare. You know what you could do? Public fucking healthcare. You nationalize fucking healthcare. Now you don't need the profit motive in order to make fucking hearing aids and probably have to make a killing off of your hearing aids. Again, the problem with a lot of fucking abundance agenda liberalism and shit like that is, whoa, they don't want to take a look on things that should not have the profit motive as the main baseline. Things with inelastic demand. You know, in this case with hearing aids, that's a part of healthcare. Healthcare is an inelastic demand. If you need a hearing aid in order to be able to hear, people are going to be willing to pay anything possible in order to be able to get that hearing aid. This can extend to surgical operations. This can extend to stuff as simple as like tooth infections and stuff like that. It could be anything in terms of like healthcare, right? So what's up, Sacrificial MILF? But the other is the redistribution of power among groups. Does this policy leave unions stronger or weaker? Environmental justice groups, corporations. Under the populist theory of power, bad policy can be, and often is, justified as good politics. In California, the California Environmental Quality Act is defended by unions that use it to greenmail all manner of project. CEQA is meant to protect the environment, but the threat of unending litigation can be used to win non-environmental concessions on virtually any building project in California. Yes, but that is a problem, again, as has been said before, with fucking housing developers wanting to cut cost in order to make higher profit on housing. That is why there's always going to be unending litigation for this. Because corporations, if I were to take a guess, don't agree with this. So they're going to fight tooth and nail in order to try to get this either repealed or work around it in order to make a profit. Again, what is the main problem here? Profit. It's not about the unions and their power. If anything, union power is at its is going to decrease more and more and more, and it's going to get fucking worse. Like, this is going to be a waste of 4 years in terms of building fucking union power with Donald Trump in the fucking White House. Because, again, it's not about that. It's not about that. It's a complete fucking farce. It's a red herring. It's about who has the power, who has the fucking money. The corporations and the rich. I support making it radically easier to form unions. I don't support making it harder to build anything and everything because unions and oil companies and NIMBYs and billionaire real estate developers find that CQA offers them leverage. Okay, the problem is then, it's not about the act itself. The act probably has perfectly fine fucking provisions. The problem is that the oil companies, the NIMBYs, and the billionaire real estate developers have power. That is the fucking issue. They have power in order to be able to bend acts like this, which are more than likely, if I were to take a guess, a band-aid solution to a broader fucking problem. It's essentially like trying to put a band-aid on a fucking gushing wound. There's still going to be fucking blood coming out of it, and companies, NIMBYs, and billionaire real estate developers are going to be still able to use this as a form of leverage. That is the fucking problem. You need to be able to go after the main fucking source of the problems. And that is these fucking guys, by taxing the crap out of them, making it such that they can't lobby for to stop particular developments and stuff like that. You know, there's like 17 trillion different things that can be suggested here. My view of power is more classically liberal. In his book, Liberalism, The Life of an Idea, Edmund Fawcett describes it neatly. Human power was implacable. It could never be relied on to behave well, whether political, economic, or social. Superior power of some people over others tended inevitably to arbitrariness and domination unless resisted and checked. To take this view means power will be ill-used by your friends as well as by your enemies, by your political opponents as well as by your neighbors. From this perspective, there is no safe reservoirs of power. There never has been. Right? Like, think about it. Has there ever been any safe reservoir of power? Right? Not really. Which is why you have to flatline it amongst everybody. That's the sort of more socialist argument, at the very least. You know, kind of like a version of it, right? Socialists, what they seek is the elimination of all forms of unjust hierarchy and the flatlining of power, which is why they also are against liberalism, because of the idea that liberalism is fundamentally incapable and not interested in tackling that dynamic, the sort of font and sort of nature of power itself. That is the problem. Corporations sometimes serve the national interest and sometimes betray it. The same is true for governments, for unions, for churches, for nonprofits. Sure, again, if we want to do the whole philosophic fucking rigmarole for as to like the nature of power and profit and yada yada yada, we like, you know, we could do the whole like 9 yards and shit like that, right? I don't like 100% like disagree with that. Again, unless you flatline everything to a sort of base level, this will always be a fucking problem. Now the question is like how, like, who's going to help administer that, blah blah blah. Could you actually be shifting the annals of power itself somewhere else? I still think that, broadly speaking, our boy Karl Barks, crazy, is probably the main guy who has this particularly solved, right? Through, well, the elimination of the profit motive of the state and, whoa, all of the fucking enforcement mechanisms and apparatuses that make it necessary to, you know, maintain the current structure. Pretty simple, right? A lot is lost when you collapse the complex interests of politics into a simple morality play. Do fucking leftists do this? Not really, right? Like, they describe it as a simple morality play, but if you actually go into what leftists believe in terms of what complex interests of politics is, generally speaking, they understand, like, yeah, if we're talking about bourgeois democracy, the people who generally have control within those democracies are the bourgeoisie, right? You know, the people with the money, with the rich, with the control, the means of production, blah, 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 blah. You know, they talk about that. And then they can also talk about the solutions to be able to fix those problems through the, well, dictatorship of the proletariat, transitioning into the, you know, lower stages of communism, you know, socialism, then the lower stages of communism, then, of course, going to communism, where all of a sudden, these thoughts and beliefs of having power no longer fucking exist because the hierarchical structures that exist currently within society are no longer there. There are often differences, often different corporations on different sides of the same issue. Again, like, that's like, we're talking specifically about corporations. Like, it doesn't matter if they're on particular sides of fucking issues, okay? The problem is that all they care about is making profit. They take certain stances because it's all about profit for them. Money is their god. Without that, well, all becomes meaningless, right? There are often different unions on different sides of the same issue. To know where you stand and who stands with you, you need to know what you are trying to achieve. This is not, I should say, some untested approach to politics. It's how Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, the two most successful national Democrats of the past 50 years, approached both their campaigns and their presidencies. Barack Obama bailing out the fucking banks and the companies during the 2008 recession, quite literally leading to the ascendancy and rise of Donald Trump by taking advantage of the politically dispossessed people because of the fact that Obama didn't take two fucking off-ramps that he had in order to fix 2008. He didn't do that, you know, by giving, like, homeowners a chance in bankruptcy courts and also forcing taxpayers to have to pay for fucking TARP. We just saw a video about this, quite literally, by Benaminute. Great name. I still like the name. The name is really good, you know. I have to compliment the name. I can't help myself, you know. From Benaminute talking about, like, how there was multiple off-ramps that Obama could have taken, and he just didn't take them. He just didn't do it. He didn't take them. And that's why people became dispossessed. And then Bill Clinton, with the repeal of fucking Glass-Steagall, you know, basically making it such that 2008 was going to happen. That and George Bush's tax cuts, making it such more efficacious for a lot of these banks to gamble with money on fucking subprime fucking mortgages, because that's what they did, because it was very lucrative for them. And then, you know, it all ended up collapsing in on itself. Whoa, crazy. Who would have thought? Because of these particular things, and Obama, you know, lost about 1,000 seats across state legislators and in the House and Congress during his fucking tenure for Democrats, and sort of helped catalyze the sort of, like, do-nothing, pathetic petulance of the fucking Democrats. And Bill Clinton being the main dude pushing the fucking goddamn not Republicans, but Democrats further and further to the right, essentially catalyzing a movement of, the solidification of fucking neoliberalism. Because here's the thing, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, when they first initially campaigned, were populist on the left. Were willing to talk about, issues with corporate power. And then they got into the presidency and did nothing to challenge corporate power. Hope and change? More of the same. This dude fucking talked about corporations and the banks. Basically gave them some of the greatest gifts in terms of the repealing of Glass-Steagall. So, again, are these two the most successful national Democrats of the past 50 years? No. I would actually disagree with that. They helped catalyze the fucking neo-fascistic movement that currently exists. Crazy. In New York Magazine, Sam Adler-Bell writes that the abundance agenda has the virtue of not demanding any significant showdown with capital or corporate power. This is wrong. Oh. Wait. Really? Is that so? So then why aren't you talking about Citizens United? Putting back in Glass-Steagall. Putting back in a sort of more stronger union protections. The PRO Act, but we want to talk about, but specifically speaking, you talk about fucking progressive policy advocates, Ezra. Those guys aren't the main people with the problem. Alright, dude. Also, you don't want to also focus on fucking billionaires and the rich. You're willing to bring them out in like a sort of mealy mouth, like, yeah, I agree with that. But you don't talk about policies or positions that, quite literally would challenge those positions. We're going to find the fucking Majority Report clip where he was on a podcast with multiple fucking billionaires, with I think Chamath Palihapitiya and I think David Sachs, and he was directly asked a question saying like, what is the problem? Ezra Klein sort of gives an answer that the billionaires don't really like. They have a fucking meltdown about it, and he doesn't continue to press them on it. It makes you think. Like David Sachs was saying like, whoa, like Ezra, you're saying that this sounds like corruption. You're saying that it's like corruption, and you were just saying like, no, it's not like corruption from you guys in particular. You just went along with their fucking bullshit, and you wonder why lefties have a problem with the abundance agenda. I wonder. God damn it. I hate that we do this. Here we go. You cannot decarbonize the economy without running headlong into fossil fuel interests. Okay, so then you bend them to your will. Bend them to your will. Use state power to force them to comply. That's what you do, okay? Fucking threaten to nationalize them. Be like, we will fucking use the full power of the federal government in order to nationalize you if you don't go along with our fucking interests. That is how you wield power. You cannot fund the kinds of public projects I support without raising taxes on the wealthy. That's true. So then you tax the fuck out of them. Tax them. Give them no fucking other choice. Use the power of the fucking government to do it. But abundance does have the virtue of not believing that politics is solely a showdown with capital or corporate power. Yeah, that's the main fucking problem with it. Much of what our society needs is made by corporations. It is what corporations do, not just what they are, that matters. Okay. Is that even true? Let's be honest here. A lot of fucking corporations don't really do much of shit or much of fucking anything. Let's keep it $1.50, alright? Nah, the problem is that these motherfuckers have a bunch of money and a bunch of power. Again, that's the fucking main issue. It's silly, dude. I'm thrilled to see come to market new drugs that save lives that would otherwise be lost. That's not corporations that are doing that. The reason why corporations make new drugs that go to market is because they know that they're going to make a profit off of it, Ezra. They know they're going to make a profit off it. How many fucking more drugs that could save even more lives are stuck in fucking R&D shelves somewhere in the fucking data vaults of these pharma corporations that are never going to fucking see the light of day because they don't make a profit for insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies. I despair to see the minds of entire generations fracked for the last drops of their attentional capacity. There will be no green transition without corporate ingenuity. Really? Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that? Again, this is the main fucking problem that people have with the Abunda agenda. For an immediate prerequisite for it to work, it has to always have the profit motive in mind. That's the issue. There will also be no green transition without fighting fossil fuel interests. I mean, we knew about the problem since the 70s, and the fossil fuel company was just like, actually, we're just not going to report anything, which is what we're supposed to do, but yeah, whatever. So then you bring down the power of the state on them. That's what you do, Ezra. Undue corporate concentration is a problem where it exists, but there is plenty of for-profit villainy in high competitive sectors. What liberalism seeks to do is align corporate capacity with public goals by shaping the markets in which they operate. The problem is that like neoliberals don't do that. And you're a neoliberal. Again, conflation of liberalism and neoliberalism. Again, Adam Smith would agree with this, for example. He would. The problem is that you're not actually interested in doing that either. It's about a rebranding of neoliberalism, which isn't fucking interested in actually bringing corporations to do the public interest of the public good. Not really. You cannot do that effectively if you treat corporations or people within them as a categorical enemy. No one really treats people within corporations as a categorical enemy. They talk about the CEOs and the rich of the corporations, generally speaking. But there is much that corporations cannot or should not do. For that, we need a strong state. The Democratic Party is supposed to be the party of that strong state. Too often it isn't. Ben Wickler, the former chair of the Wisconsin Democratic Party, told me last year that fundamentally Democrats are the people who are in politics to make government work for the people, which is a very old New Deal concept of what the Democratic Party is about. He went on to tell me a story about some huge piles of coal in downtown Green Bay, Wisconsin, that had been an eyesore for decades, but that the state's Democrats had pulled the money to remove. Democrats are the party that gets rid of giant piles of coal, he said. I love that line, but it proved premature. The coal is still sitting there. End of optional trim. Okay, there's more of a bit here. Okay. I've been amused to see abundance described as a form of rebranded neoliberalism. Here we go. Neoliberalism is a slippery term, but the shackling of the state was a thoroughly neoliberal project. This is an argument that historians such as Paul Sabine and Gary Gersel have been making, and it is central to the story that we tell in the book. The New Left was deeply skeptical of the state, often for good reasons, and it put considerable effort to trying it down in process in lawsuits. This is why the state is often most encumbered in the blue states, where the New Left held the most power. This is also part of why so many on the left today refuse to confront the way this state failed. That hobbling is partly their inheritance. I don't think that's necessarily the case. Broadly speaking, the left understands the main fucking problem, and it's not the left, the new left, that's the hobbling of the fucking state. That was neoliberals who fucking hobbled the state under Ronald fucking Reagan, through doing a lot of deregulations of corporations, making it such that they are able to significantly lobby the fucking government and push for their interests within the annals of Congress. That's what's causing this hobbling. It's not the new left. Bill Clinton sort of helped accelerate the problems that were created by Reagan, by manufacturing the fucking consent, saying that, you know what, yeah, we don't need fucking big government to do stuff, right? Quite literally with like the cutting of like Social Security that he fucking did, right? You don't need big government to fucking help you. That was literally Bill Clinton who did that, and that's all fucking Reaganite bullshit. That's the issue. Both parties have been captured. That is the main problem. Those processes, even if they have grown beyond the intentions of their architects, are their achievements. So yes, I want to see more redistribution, but I want to see that redistribution deliver what it promises. If Democrats are taxing people to build high-speed rail, that high-speed rail should exist. If they are taxing people to build electric vehicle chargers, those chargers should get built. If they are promising lower drug prices in Medicare, those lower prices should show up quickly. The problem is again, the people who get in the way of stuff like this are corporations and the rich. High-speed rail is a perfect example. Who got in the fucking way of high-speed rail projects in California? It was Elon Musk, who is a billionaire, because he said, like, oh, I'll do it better with, like, Boring Company. Because he wanted people to buy more fucking Teslas and not rely on trains for transportation. Again, that's the main issue. For example, with electric vehicle chargers, Elon Musk also would get in the way of that because he wants that to only be Tesla proprietary hardware, because he wants his vehicles to be the only electric vehicles that are on the road. And for lowering drug prices in Medicare, again, who gets in the way with that? Pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies that lobby the government to not be able to lower drug prices. That's the fucking issue. That's why all of these things, it's not because the fucking left get in the way of this regulation. The left would be totally fine with this. They don't have a problem with this. The main fucking issue is the fact that corporate power doesn't allow for any of that. Crazy. One way you build support for higher taxes is to point out the monstrous levels of wealth inequality. Another is that you deliver things that people want, and you deliver them quickly. Democrats are good at one of those strategies and bad at the other. But that is not an accident. To overhaul the government so it can deliver what it promises would require Democrats to confront not just their enemies, but also their own friends. Yeah, and they're never going to fucking do that because they're stupid fucking cowards who are complicit with corporate power. That's what it is. I'm all for fighting concentrated corporate power. Break up Ticketmaster's monopoly. Sure, man. Am I not fucking pharmaceutical companies? The oil companies? The banks? There's more monopolies, I think, that are more important to go after primarily besides fucking Ticketmaster. Sure, yeah. Break up Ticketmaster. I agree with that. There's more bigger fish to fry first. But I worry about a politics that often sees only problems of corporate and oligarchic control. Well, that's the fucking problem. That is the only fucking issue that you have to think about. And that's really the fucking main issue here. Again, it's not a problem of like fucking goddamn like party structure as has been outlined here, or particular interest groups that have a say within the political process. It is oligarchic and corporate capture. There have been studies that have been done by fucking Yale, dude, who said like Congress only serves oligarchy and the rich. That is the problem. That is a politics with so totalizing a theory of power that has lost a clear view of policy. Too many problems defy that framework. A left that wants to build public housing and decarbonize the economy will need a government capable of building fast, well, and cheaply. Confronting pro-corporate power will not be enough to rebuild a capable state. Okay. Ezra, there's this thing that's called, like, being able to walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. You have to go after corporate power first because they're going to be the things that are getting in the way of the reconstruction of the capable state. You have to go after one before being able to make the next. That's not walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. I guess you could technically do it first, but there might be a significant overextension. The rebuilding of a capable state can also go after corporate power at the same time. That's the main issue here. A world in which local regulations drive the cost of an affordable housing unit in Washington, D.C. project to 1.2 million. To be fair, that includes the cost of a rooftop aquaponics farm. Is a world in which the left simply cannot house the people it has promised to house. That is a world in which the left will fail, both substantively and politically. I wonder if Ezra Klein is okay with like Soviet brutalist structures then, right? Would he be okay with that? Just curious. So I don't see a contradiction between abundance and the goals of the left. Okay. Well, he's not learning. He's not gonna learn. He doesn't understand what the actual problem is. It's not challenging power. It's just not. Again, why don't we pull up? We'll pull up the fucking majority report clip. Fuck it. Let's go get it right now. Let's do the meme. Libertarian billionaires seek to reshape the Democrats. We'll do the meme.
And he...
Hello, Shim Sita. It's the Baileys!
We're your ally now. But before I came on the show, I had gone on X and I saw a clip of you going around where you're saying that one of the problems with the Biden administration was that you couldn't get anybody on the phone. And in the Trump administration, you make the call, the deputy chief of staff picks up, you say, hey, I need you to talk to this company. I work with them. They're
Pause
freaking
it
out about the
again.
tariff.
You just saw
So
it.
he's pointing it out. This is good.
The key is not just you couldn't get anybody on the phone. It was like, I gave all this money to Biden.
So it is good that he's pointing it out, right? But again, as Sam Cedar is fucking saying right here, right now, the problem is that billionaires give a lot of fucking money. Now, he's tried to dispel that sort of in his article that he's writing here, but he didn't really like dispel the fucking problem that abundance is going to tackle that issue. He didn't talk about what can be done in terms of campaign finance reform. Nothing really tangible at all. He just acknowledges that it's a problem that exists.
And I was a mega donor, and I did not get a call back. That's the key part here. But Ezra focuses on a different part. Go.
Couldn't get anybody on the phone. And in the Trump administration, you make the call, the deputy chief of staff picks up, you say, hey, I need you to talk to this company. I work with them. They're freaking out about the tariffs. The deputy chief of staff calls the company. They work something out.
No, not that they work something out. They listen.
They listen. This world in which we are doing the deal making by individual relationships, by who can get their calls answered, not by rules that feel clear and stable.
That's how the Biden.
Hold on a sec.
No, but
So this is Ezra, pointing out the actual potential problem, the corruption that can be existing, and obviously Chamath, who's a billionaire, and all the billionaire butt buddies, they're gonna have a problem with this. It's like, it's challenge. This is a potential challenge to our power, because that's the main issue here that you're not addressing with the abundance agenda, Ezra. It fundamentally doesn't challenge corporate oligarchic control and the power. That's the problem.
But that's how the Biden administration worked, Ezra.
Clip. That's not what Chamath said.
And that's not what I said.
Well, Chamath,
Ezra, you're trying to make it sound like corruption.
Hold on.
Ezra and Biden, it was George Clooney that was making the call. Who cares what George Clooney thinks?
Didn't you just say on? I was very, very critical of Biden.
I saw that clip, Ezra, and what Chamath said. Hold on. What Chamath said is.
See how these little dumb fuck billionaires are getting super hella fucking triggered about this? Like, wait a minute, you're pointing out the fact that we're corrupt? What the fuck? Well, you can't be doing that. What the?
Simply that the White House listens when he calls, whereas he couldn't get his calls returned by the Obama administration.
Great. I think we're actually not saying something all that different here.
You made it sound like corruption.
I actually do think what Trump is working through is deal by deal patronage based on how he's...
David Sachs. That's because when Chamath was talking with that dumb fuck comedian podcast, that's exactly what he made it sound like. That's the problem.
It is simply that the White House listens when he calls, whereas he could...
It shouldn't listen. That is the problem. The fact that the White House is listening is the problem.
And get his calls returned
but Ezra
by
doesn't
the
challenge
Obama
this.
administration.
Great. I think we're actually not saying something all that different here.
You made it sound like corruption.
I actually do think what Trump is working through is...
See, he's not going to fucking challenge that framing, because that's what it should actually be about.
Deal by deal patronage based on how he sees the company. The other country.
That's not what happened. Ezra, can I just make sure that this is clear to you? This is a 150-year-old American business. I have no interest in that company except a friendship.
A friendship.
These are Americans hiring Americans.
So there it is. And he goes on in this to talk about his expertise and knocking the Biden. But his first claim in that video was, I was a mega donor. I gave even more money to the Bidens. Mm-hmm. And Ezra does not go on to tackle the obvious problem, which is, hey, wait a second. Even even if you didn't get special treatment, it was for a friend and it wasn't to, why do you get to promote your friend's 150-year-old business?
Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, that's the problem, Ezra. That's the thing that you're not pointing out. Chamath can just call a fucking dude and get an answer and promote his fucking interests. That's the fucking issue that people are having with the abundance agenda, because the abundance agenda doesn't tackle that issue. Whoa, crazy. I got pretty much what I needed out of that. I don't think achieving the goals of the modern left is even possible without the overhaul of the state that abundance envisions. I don't think abundance is really envisioning much of an overhaul of a state. That's the thing. If it's not tackling the main fucking animal of power, the main people with the levers of power, that being the rich and the corporations, is it really going to be an overhaul of the state? I don't think so. But I've come to appreciate the tendencies between abundance and the purer forms of populism. We really do have a lot of different theories of power. Very cool and very good. I mean, again, I've outlined the main problems with the abundance agenda yet again. It, simply put, just does not tackle the root causes and basis of the issues. The fact that a fucking billionaire can just call up one-a-day friends, be like, hey, yo, what's up, squad fam? Can you fucking do me this favor? Call up, like, some dumbass within the administration and do that exactly. Abundance does not tackle those fucking issues at all whatsoever, and would prefer to focus on progressive policy groups and over-fucking regulation, which is, guess what? Shit that the Republicans used to fucking say, and still say to this fucking day. That is the main problem with the abundance agenda. But it looks like to me that I don't think Ezra's really going to be taking that particular lesson to heart. I have a feeling that's not going to happen, unfortunately.